This work is not an act of heresy, but a rigorous historical audit intended to purge the modern counterfeit filters that have obscured the original divine signal. As an ordained minister reframing this deconstruction, the goal is to expose the systemic erasure of the tetragrammaton and the imposition of a man-made, translated cage of tradition. By stripping away the Hollywood bastardized aesthetics, those lazy titles and aesthetic symbols, the work forces the listener into a posture of radical submission to the raw, unedited architecture of the scriptures. It is a call for a return to the primitive, accurate name requiring the listener to move past institutional comfort and confront the terrifying, pluripotential truth of Elohim Yahweh on his own terms. Yahweh, you who inhabit the praises of your people, prepare this circle for your presence. We lift our hands, open, upward, in total submission, ready to receive the raw signal, stripped of the centuries of ink that clouded your design. Let our hands be a sign of our surrender, not to tradition, but to the source. Let our voices become one in the clarity of your truth, rejecting the lazy titles that have muddied our understanding. Let the love you impart clean the architecture of our spirits, washing away the modern counterfeit claims and the translated cages we once called home. Let this moment of exposure linger in our hearts, a permanent glitch in the system that reminds us to keep reading, to keep auditing, until we find the path back to the beginning. We petition this in the name that was erased, the Almighty Elohim Yahweh, that we may finally understand the power of the original sequence. Amen.
What if the devil's greatest trick wasn't I don't exist, but replacing the name with God and calling it the same?
They call him God like that's his holy name. Lazy German title, eternal shame.
Yahweh, the name he gave Moses at the burning bush flame.
Exodus 3:15, this is my name forever, you forgot it just the same. Hello, him, plural powers, not just singularity. Exodus 24,
no graven image, no likeness, no game.
that cross you wear, them Roman torture tool on display.
It's straight idolatry. Exodus 25 says Yahweh is jealous today.
God damn it, it's just words lost in the wind.
But hanging Yahweh on your neck, that's where the real sin begins. Exodus 25, the jealous one visits iniquity, and you made him soft with the features and imagery. Two faces in one public closest sin.
The name was erased.
Who's deceiving thee?
What if the devil's greatest trick
Was the Bible sick with lies so slick?
fire and brimstone, patiently written from the start? Let us must first
Uncovered as a breaststroke, as above, so below. Hell is heaven. Old Testament Testament, Yahweh drowns the world in righteous flood. New Testament version spills his blood, calls it love. If Yahweh is the Father that Jesus called by name, why does your tradition hide the tetragrammaton flame?
You call God in English comfort, never crack the Hebrew frame. Elohim, majesty, plurality.
That's your modern counterfeit claim. Isaiah 14:12, morning star, son of the dawn. Job 1:6, hesitant, accuser in the heavenly court.
Hell, multiple Hebrew words, not your eternal fire spawn.
Genesis 3:7, fig leaves, never apple drawn.
Run back to the book, check the name with your own hands.
They turn Yahweh into a hipster Jesus with skinny jeans and laser lights. Sunday service like a Netflix set, fog machines and fake highlights. Mega pastors in private jets, preaching wealth while the book says otherwise. Hollywood gave you a blue-white savior with that for the gram and merch sale.
Gen Z quitting TikTok verses, never read the scroll.
Watered down gospel, positive vibes, never
Fear the jealous soul.
crosses as fashion statements. God is a vibe, never the name that burns. Bastard guys, Disney-fied, neutered for the modern age. Old flood, new blood,
Personalities class.
one jealous sovereign.
One preached as love at last.
Holy, holy,
Scribes altered lines for centuries.
Yahweh removed, Elohim misunderstood.
Are you lost yet? One bloody cycles in the hard-code loop. The architect snuck out the ghost in the group. And illustrically, reach on the secrets.
Chromosome 2, walk on human sequence.
One of the devil's greatest trick.
Was the Bible thick with lies so slick?
Uncover the nudity, let's walk the way.
God damn that cross you wear today. You don't know Yahweh, just to translate K.
Everyone dies.
The greatest trick was in the fall from grace. It was the book that damned the human race. God damn the idolatry, you erased name. Run to the book, realize you're wrong.
Everyone dies.
Everyone dies.
Have you ever looked at like a massive complex system? And I mean anything here, right?
Yeah.
It could be theoretical physics or software engineering or even, honestly, your own mental health.
Oh, absolutely.
And you just thought, the standard way of doing this is completely fundamentally broken. I'm just going to rebuild it from scratch.
Yeah. Sweeping the whole board clean.
Exactly. Well, today's deep dive, it's about exactly that. We are exploring this fascinating framework called the system triumvirate.
It's quite the stack of sources we have on the table today, too.
Right. I mean, we're looking at raw autobiographical files, these incredibly dense physics papers pulled from the Zenodo Open Science Archive, Android app source codes, and a massive 7-book personal philosophy compendium.
It's an incredibly diverse set of materials, but they all actually point back to this one unified, multi-layered architecture of life, physics, and AI.
Yeah, and this entire ecosystem was developed by an independent systems architect who operates under the moniker Locavelli.
When we say he rebuilt things from scratch, we mean stripped all the way down to the subatomic level.
Yeah.
And he rebuilt it using this deeply unorthodox, just relentless methodology.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack what he calls a mind as a referee system.
Right, which is a great term for it.
Yeah, we are going to look at how extreme, weaponized transparency, multi-LLM artificial intelligence audits, and real-world receipts are basically used to prevent cognitive collapse.
And we want to understand how his core concept, which is failure is direction, becomes a literal operating system for everything. I mean, from mapping 5-dimensional physics to literally raising a child.
What is truly fascinating to me about diving into these source materials is that, well, this isn't just an intellectual exercise for him.
No, not at all. It's a survival mechanism.
Right. This entire framework is a testament to what happens when you treat your own biases, your own emotional failures, and your theoretical blind spots with the exact same, ruthless, dispassionate debugging process that you'd use on a broken piece of code.
It is essentially a hyper-engineering mindset applied directly to the messy, chaotic reality of the human condition.
Okay, so let's establish the human at the center of all this, because the context is so crucial
It's the
here.
foundation of the whole thing.
The architect's real name is Robert Michael Early Wine Lucas. He operates out of rural Connorsville, Indiana, under the umbrella Early Wine Systems.
Right.
Now, looking at the source files, here's the detail that immediately jumps out to me. He is a high school dropout.
Yes.
He is entirely unaccredited in physics. He has no degree in computer science, and he is not formally trained in engineering.
Right. And in his autobiographical source files, which is a collection he refers to as the Silent Architect, he explicitly addresses this up front.
Yeah, he doesn't hide it.
He really doesn't. He states that this credential gap is not an apology. He isn't, like, managing some deep insecurity about it. He actually views the lack of formal conditioning as a structural feature of his work.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on that immediately. Because if someone tells me they are mapping five-dimensional physics and building complex software, but they didn't finish high school, my first instinct, and probably your first instinct listening to this, is just profound skepticism.
Oh, of course, that's natural.
Right. How are we supposed to take this seriously? Isn't saying it's a feature, not a bug, just a convenient way to brush off a lack of formal education?
It is a totally fair reaction, and honestly, it is exactly the reaction he anticipates people having.
So how does he justify it?
Well, his stance is that institutions award credentials to people who successfully complete a predefined, pre-approved path. You know, you learn the legacy systems, you learn the legacy assumptions, and then you get a piece of paper.
You play the game, you get the prize.
Exactly. But he is building his path in real time, at full scale, completely outside those legacy assumptions.
Yeah.
So for him, the body of work is the credential.
Oh, I see.
He argues that if the math holds up under brutal scrutiny, and if the code compiles and runs seamlessly, the degree is irrelevant. The output just has to speak for itself because there is literally no institution to vouch for him.
That makes sense. The proof is entirely in the pudding.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the operational reality of how he actually gets this output done. He operates on a foundational doctrine, right? This core directive that governs everything.
Yeah, his guiding principle.
It is underpromise, overbuild, fix forever.
Yes. And the mechanism he uses to execute that directive is what he calls the upgrade-only doctrine.
Right. This is huge.
It is a load-bearing principle for his entire life, and it has 4 strict, non-negotiable rules. Step 1 is build new.
Build new. Meaning?
Meaning you do not patch deployed broken components. You stand up a replacement completely cold.
So if a system is working, whether that is a piece of code or, say, a bad morning routine, you don't tinker with the broken thing. You just build the alternative entirely from scratch.
Exactly. Because his logic is that tinkering with a fundamentally broken system often just introduces new, more complex bugs.
Yeah, spaghetti code.
Right. So step 2 is validate cold. You run that new system in total isolation until it successfully passes every single stress test that the old system could survive.
Okay, so you build it, then you isolate it and beat it up.
Exactly. Then step 3 is deploy parallel. You run both the old and the new systems simultaneously, incrementally shifting the traffic, or the cognitive load, over to the new one.
Okay.
And finally, step 4 is retire old. You decommission the legacy component cleanly.
Cleanly, like it's totally gone.
Completely. No orphaned logic, no keeping it around just in case, no backsliding.
Okay, let me make sure I am visualizing this correctly for you listening, because when I first read this, I immediately thought of trying to fix a flying airplane by building a new one right next to it in midair, which is obviously impossible.
Right, that sounds like a disaster.
But this is more like migrating to a new computer operating system, right? Say you are just completely tired of Windows crashing on you, so you decide to switch to Linux.
That's a great analogy.
You don't try to rewrite the Windows kernel while you are actively using it to check your email.
No, you'd crash the whole machine.
Right. You buy a second hard drive, you install Linux from scratch, that's build new.
Yes.
You test all your apps on it to make sure they work, that's validate cold. You run both drives for a week, slowly moving your files over, which is deploy parallel.
Exactly.
And then, only when you are 100% sure, you completely wipe the Windows drive. Retire old.
That is a much more grounded analogy.
Yeah.
And what is really critical about that process is the safety it provides.
Safety. How so?
Well, if the new Linux drive crashes during the validation phase, your life doesn't fall apart. You just reboot into Windows and keep working while you fix the new drive.
Okay, that makes sense. But I still have a major question about the human toll of this.
the workload.
Yes. Running two systems simultaneously that deploy parallel phase sounds incredibly exhausting.
It is.
If someone is already completely overwhelmed by a bad habit or a failing project, telling them to build a second system from scratch and run both at the same time sounds like a recipe for total burnout. How does his system account for the sheer exhaustion of doing double the work?
It is a massive heavy lift in the short term, absolutely. There's no getting around that. But his argument is that we drastically underestimate the ambient daily cognitive drain of maintaining a broken system.
What do you mean by ambient drain?
Think about how much mental energy you spend just compensating for a bad habit.
Yeah.
Apologizing for it, trying to lightly tweak it, feeling guilty about failing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a lot of hidden energy.
It is a massive energy leak. So the upgrade-only doctrine requires this really sharp spike in effort up front to build a parallel system, but it permanently seals the energy leak.
So it's basically trading chronic, low-grade suffering for acute, highly productive effort.
Precisely. And to really understand why he is so uncompromising about this, we have to look at the pressure that forged the system in the first place.
Right, the recovery aspect.
Yes, this system exists to channel that immense, just crushing weight of addiction recovery into unyielding production. In his writings, he documents his receipts, basically, to prove this system actually works.
And these are some serious receipts.
They really are. He has over 2 years entirely off real drugs and over 100 days off MAT therapy.
And just for context, for you listening, MAT stands for medication-assisted treatment. It is a highly effective clinical approach to opioid addiction. It usually involves medications like Suboxone or methadone to normalize brain chemistry and block the euphoric effects of opioids.
Right.
So getting off MAT is a massive physiologically grueling milestone. It's not something you just casually do.
It is incredibly difficult. And he explicitly states that he doesn't just manage the pressure of that recovery, he actively uses it as fuel to build things.
Yeah. The output we see in the source materials is incredibly tangible. It's not just theories. For example, he built something called the Indiana Justice Hub.
Which is a huge project.
Right. I was looking at the documentation for this. It is a public records aggregator that pulls in state jail and court data. And the reason he built it is just wild.
It really is.
The state of Indiana simply wouldn't consolidate the information in a way that was accessible to the public.
Typical bureaucracy.
Exactly. So he just did it himself.
Yeah.
But he did it using Flutter, which is a UI toolkit, and something called custom headless scraping.
Yeah, that's where his technical self-education really shows.
Right. Now, I understand Flutter, that's for the interface, but what exactly is headless scraping, and why does that matter here?
So when you usually browse the web, your browser loads all the graphics, the CSS styling, the images, the layout.
Right, all the pretty stuff.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of time and processing power. A headless browser is essentially a web browser running without the graphical user interface.
So it's just code.
It operates entirely in the background, in the terminal. It interacts directly with the DOM, which is the document object model, the underlying code of the website, and it makes the network request directly.
So it is stripping away all the visual fluff and just looking at the raw data matrix of the website.
Exactly. By using custom headless scraping, early Wine Lucas can write scripts that navigate the state's slow, fragmented database interfaces at superhuman speeds.
Yeah.
He's extracting thousands of public records, formatting them, and feeding them into his own accessible interface in minutes. He bypassed the state's inefficiency by interacting directly with the architecture of their data.
That's incredible. And software isn't even his only output. The sources also detail his work in a glass-blowing studio, Lucchivelli's Loki Glassworks.
Yes.
He works with raw borosilicate rod. Now, I have seen glass blowing at, Renaissance fairs and stuff, but the way he approaches it seems entirely different. Why is the distinction of borosilicate so important here?
Borosilicate glass is what Pyrex used to be made of, and it is what high-end laboratory equipment is made of. It is fundamentally different from the soft glass you see at craft fairs.
Okay, how so?
It has a very low coefficient of thermal expansion.
Meaning, what, it doesn't expand or shrink very much when it gets hot or cold?
Right. Which makes it incredibly resistant to thermal shock. You can heat it to immense temperatures and cool it rapidly without it shattering.
Ah, okay.
But because it is so resilient, it requires an intensely hot torch, an oxygen-propane mix, and a really deep understanding of thermal dynamics to manipulate. He treats glass blowing not as a craft, but as a precision materials discipline.
So he's treating it like engineering.
Exactly. He is exploring fluid dynamics, resonance, and heat transfer. In fact, he designed a custom fermentation device out of this glass called the twin airlock that was precise enough to be commissioned and sent all the way to Germany.
So we have headless data scraping, precision materials engineering, and he also builds native Android apps like Power Browser and File Cleaner Pro. He is completely self-taught across the full stack. Yeah.
But, as I read through all these achievements, I kept looking for the core motivation. Because you don't push yourself this relentlessly just to have a bunch of apps on a store.
No, the pressure has to come from somewhere deeper.
Exactly. And the sources make the why very clear. It is his daughter, Amira.
Yes. To provide a permanent architecture for her, he wrote a massive 7-book compendium called the Dual Foundation Canon.
Right.
For Machiavelli, doctrine without an object to protect is just aesthetics. It is just intellectual posturing.
It's just theory.
Exactly. Amira is the protected core. The doctrine, the 72 laws he wrote within this canon, are simply the walls of the room she lives in.
Wow.
He wants her to have the exact operational blueprint he built his life around, just in case he isn't there to teach it to her personally.
And what I deeply appreciate about this is that he emphasizes the doctrine has to work in mundane, gritty reality.
It cannot all be high-level coding and 5-dimensional physics. The sources note that his routine involves waking up at 4 in the morning to feed his 14-pound tuxedo cat, affectionately named Little Shit.
Right, which is just a great detail.
It is. And it involves bottle-feeding fragile neonatal rescue kittens named Ratty and Junior. It involves sitting down and configuring simplified tech setups for his 79-year-old grandfather so he can use his devices without getting confused.
Those details are so vital. He notes that theorizing 5-dimensional physics and maintaining strict feeding schedules for neonatal kittens have to coexist.
Yeah.
That is the actual texture of a life built outside institutional ivory towers. Everything happens at once, the chaos is constant, and the work just has to get done anyway.
Right.
If the philosophy doesn't work while you are sleep-deprived and holding a bottle for a sick kitten, it is a useless philosophy.
Completely useless. But if he can manage all of that, it begs the question, how does this internal, highly personal framework handle external chaos?
That's the real test.
Right, because he can control his code and he can control his glass-blowing torch, but you cannot control other people. Other people don't run on his upgrade-only doctrine.
Right, they run on their own messy systems. That is where we have to look at the structural architecture he built for human interaction.
Yeah.
That is the dual foundation canon.
Okay, so let's dig into that. The canon contains 72 laws, merging his personal philosophical framework, which he terms Machiavellianism, with a very modernized, strategic Machiavellian doctrine.
Yes.
But honestly, jumping into a 72-law philosophical text sounds completely exhausting. What I found remarkable is what he calls the second edition accessibility framework.
Oh, it is absolutely brilliant. He recognized that his own mind runs at an extremely high bandwidth, pushing constant data and requiring rigid structures.
Yeah.
But he is writing this for an audience, potentially his daughter in the future, or current readers who might be overwhelmed, traumatized, or just experiencing severe decision fatigue.
The irony there is just wonderful. You have this highly intense, relentless systems thinker, and he spends a massive portion of the book building explicit on-ramps and off-ramps for the reader.
Right, he doesn't just leave them behind.
He includes a section called Canon Light, which is a 20-page, completely jargon-free summary of the core concepts. He adds pacing labels to chapters. He literally puts text boxes that say, "Stop here if you're tired. The next section is dense."
It demonstrates a profound, practical empathy. He maps out different reading paths. If you are in early addiction recovery and your cognitive load is totally maxed out, you take path A.
Okay.
If you are a parent trying to establish household order, you take path B. If you are a high-intensity thinker looking to optimize, you take path C. He explicitly gives the reader permission to put the book down, to skip ahead, to just not master it all at once.
I mean, think about that for a second. Think about how often you abandon a dense nonfiction book out of sheer fatigue, and then you just feel incredibly guilty about it.
All the time.
What if the book actively gave you permission to skip to the end of the ladder? He knows that without concrete, low-energy tools, the canon risks becoming just another collection of cool ideas that sit on a shelf rather than a working operating system people can actually implement.
And one of the most powerful low-energy tools he provides in there is called the chaos compression protocol.
Okay, yes.
This is specifically designed for high-intensity minds whose main bottleneck is internal chaos, overthinking, and anxiety-induced paralysis.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of this, because I think everyone listening has experienced that feeling where your brain is completely overloaded and you are just paralyzed. I mean, I get decision fatigue just looking at my email inbox sometimes.
Oh, exactly. So when you reach that state of cognitive overload, your brain is essentially experiencing an amygdala hijack.
Okay, what does that mean neurologically?
It means the fear center of your brain, the amygdala, is overwhelming the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that handles logic and execution.
Got it.
In that state, you do not need deep philosophical insight. You need a mechanical protocol you can execute blindly to regain control. The chaos compression protocol is a 5-step process to force that reset.
Step 1 is name the chaos. You just write down everything spinning in your head in a quick, unfiltered list. Why is the physical act of writing it down so important here?
It is all about offloading working memory. When you are stressed, your brain is trying to keep all these spinning plates in the air simultaneously. The unpaid bill, the awkward email, the messy kitchen.
Yeah.
It requires massive neurological energy just to remember the list of things stressing you out. By writing it down, you externalize the data storage. You prove to your brain that the information is safe on the paper, which immediately lowers the ambient anxiety.
That makes total sense. Then you move to step 2, which is reduce scope. You look at that terrifying list you just made and you circle one item, just one. Everything else is categorized as later.
This combats decision fatigue. When you have 20 urgent things to do, deciding which one to do first becomes its own exhausting task.
Right.
By forcing yourself to isolate a single variable, you narrow your visual and mental field.
Okay, then step 3, set a tiny action. You choose a task related to that one circled item. But the rule is it can only take 5 to 10 minutes and has to be incredibly small.
Because the goal isn't to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to break the paralysis.
So if the circled item is, say, do my taxes, the 5-minute action is not do the math.
No, absolutely not. The action is open the laptop and create a folder on the desktop called Taxes 2026.
Okay.
The barrier to entry has to be so low that your anxiety cannot find a logical reason to avoid it.
That brings us to step 4. Execute without judging the quality. You just do the 5-minute task. The victory is entirely in the execution, not the perfection. You ship imperfect work instead of endlessly tweaking it in your head.
This is crucial for perfectionists. Perfectionism is often just a socially acceptable form of procrastination driven by a fear of failure.
Wow, yes.
By removing the judgment of quality, you remove the fear.
And finally, step 5, log the win. Keep a simple physical log that says, I did X today.
That log is a receipt. It is tangible proof to yourself that you can generate momentum.
Okay.
The dopamine hit from crossing that tiny task off the list chemically alters your brain state. It shifts you out of the amygdala hijack and back into executive functioning. The protocol focuses entirely on action preceding belief.
Action preceding belief.
Yeah, you do not wait to feel ready or motivated. You run the protocol, and the motivation follows the action.
It is just a brilliant piece of psychological engineering, but he applies the same engineering mindset to how other people treat him, which he details in the canon as weaponized transparency and the loyalty code.
Yes, this is fascinating.
He formalizes the intuitive, often messy feelings we all have about trust and betrayal into a predictive diagnostic tool. It is called the lie, steal, snitch pipeline.
This is one of his most structural contributions to interpersonal dynamics. Usually when someone betrays us, it feels like a sudden explosion, right? We feel completely blindsided.
Right.
But Lockevelli argues that betrayal is almost always a mechanical sequence with clear, observable precursors.
So the pipeline is a 3-step predictive model. Step 1 is the lie. It is the very first deviation from the truth. It might be small, it might seem harmless. The protocol dictates that you don't overreact, you don't blow up the relationship, but you log it. You recognize that the perimeter has been breached.
Because if a person is comfortable distorting reality to manage your perception in a small way, they have established a precedent.
Right.
Step 2 is steal. The behavior inevitably escalates into taking what isn't theirs. And this is not just about physical theft.
It can be abstract.
Exactly. It could be stealing your time by being chronically late without apology, stealing money, or stealing credit for your work. It is an extraction of value based on the foundational lie that they are somehow entitled to it.
And then, if that is allowed to continue, you hit step 3, which is snitch, or active harm. This is the final betrayal where the person actively attacks you, throws you under the bus, or harms your reputation to protect themselves from the consequences of their own stealing and lying.
By mapping this pipeline out, he provides exact scripts and rules for enforcing boundaries early.
So you don't wait for the explosion.
Right. If you catch step 1, the lie, you don't wait for step 3. You say, I noticed the timeline you gave me didn't match the email records. I am not looking for a fight, but this system requires total honesty to function.
That is exactly why it is called weaponized transparency. He isn't just sitting around feeling betrayed or acting like a victim. He has an operational framework for identifying the mechanics of betrayal long before the catastrophic third step happens.
He is formalizing human intuition into an engineering diagnostic.
And this raises a fascinating pivot, because having established these rigid, hyperlogical, uncompromising rules for human interaction and emotional regulation,
Yeah.
what happens when you take that exact same philosophy, that exact same intolerance for lies, and scale it up to the literal laws of the universe?
Right, the physics.
I've been waiting for this. Let's look at the physics papers in the source stack. This is the System Manifold Engine, or SME, which is currently at version 12.1.
The system manifold engine is early Lucas's attempt at a unified field theory, or a theory of everything. Specifically, it is a 5-dimensional warped thick-brain theoretical physics framework.
Okay, we need to pause immediately and unpack that, because 5-dimensional warped thick brain is a massive string of jargon.
It's a lot, yeah.
Let's break it down for the listener. What is the fundamental problem in physics he is actually trying to solve here?
So the core problem in modern physics is that we have 2 incredibly successful rule books that completely refuse to talk to each other.
Okay.
On one side, we have the standard model of particle physics. This rulebook governs the microscopic world. Quarks, electrons, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces. It is incredibly precise.
Right.
On the other side, we have general relativity, Einstein's theory, which governs gravity and the macroscopic universe. Planets, stars, galaxies.
But if you try to use the math of general relativity to explain a subatomic particle, the math just completely breaks down and spits out infinities.
Yes.
And if you use the standard model to explain a black hole, it also fails. They are fundamentally incompatible.
Exactly. So for decades, physicists have been trying to build a unified geometric structure that accommodates both. The SME is Loki-Veli's attempt at this. He uses a brain cosmology.
A brain with a B.
Yes, B-R-A-N-E. In string theory, a brain, which is short for membrane, is a physical object that exists in multiple dimensions. Think of a piece of paper as a 2-dimensional brain.
Okay.
Our entire observable universe in this theory might be a 3-dimensional brain floating in a higher dimensional space, which physicists call the bulk.
And the SME uses a thick brain. What does the thick part mean?
A standard brain is theoretically infinitely thin, but a thick brain implies that the boundary of our universe actually has depth or thickness in that higher 5th dimension.
Oh, I see.
This thickness allows for different fields like gravity and electromagnetism to leak or interact across the boundary in very specific ways, potentially explaining why gravity is so much weaker than the other fundamental forces.
Okay, so he is building this incredibly complex geometric model from a garage in Indiana, completely without a university backing him.
Right.
But what makes the source materials so staggering to read isn't just the math itself, it is the methodology of how he publishes it. He archives these papers on Zenodo, which is an open access repository for researchers.
Yes.
But when he uploads version 10 or 11 or 12.1, he publishes his complete failure record right alongside the theory.
This is deeply unusual. In the academic world, peer-reviewed papers are highly polished. They present the final successful derivation. They sweep the months of messy, failed attempts, the dead ends, and the null results completely under the rug to present a clean narrative of discovery.
Right, the illusion of perfection.
Exactly. But Loki-Veli includes every single failed derivation attempt completely intact in the public document.
He literally states in the text, the failure record is the methodology. You can read exactly how he tested a tensor equation, exactly where it broke down and how it was corrected. It goes back to his foundational doctrines, specifically L1, failure is direction, and L4, truth over comfort.
By publishing the failures, he provides a map of the minefield for anyone else working on the problem. It is radical transparency applied to mathematics. And this commitment to L4, truth over comfort, leads to one of the most tense and fascinating decisions in the entire SME document regarding something called the R value.
Yes, the tensor to scalar ratio. Let's explain why this number is so dangerous in cosmology.
In inflationary cosmology, which is the study of the universe's rapid expansion fractions of a second after the Big Bang, the R value measures the footprint of primordial gravitational waves.
Okay.
It is a highly scrutinized number. There's enormous implicit pressure in mainstream theoretical physics to produce models that output R values that comfortably fit within current observational bounds. Right now, the most stringent upper limit on the R value is 0.036, set by the BICE and Keck-Array experiments at the South Pole.
So if a theory predicts an R value higher than 0.036, the tilt-up data essentially says the theory is wrong. It is mathematically falsified.
Exactly. So Machiavelli runs his five-dimensional framework, he crunches the geometry, and the math spits out an R value of 0.0348.
0.0348, that is terrifyingly close to the 0.036 ceiling.
It is practically scraping the ceiling. If the next generation of cosmic microwave background observations, like the upcoming Simons Observatory or CMBS-4, tightens that bound even slightly and lowers the ceiling to, say, 0.0344, his entire theory is instantly dead.
Now, a lesser theorist, or someone trying to protect their ego, might look at that 0.0348, panic, and go back to the equations.
Oh, absolutely.
They might tweak a variable here, massage a parameter there, just to pull the number down to a safer 0.02, just to ensure the theory survives the next decade of telescope data.
That happens all the time.
But Machiavelli didn't do that.
He refused because of L4. Truth over comfort. An inaccurate massage number serves nobody. He published the 0.0348 exactly as it emerged from the geometry. If the upcoming observations kill the theory, it gets rebuilt.
The upgrade-only doctrine again.
Exactly. Falsification is a feature to him, not a threat. It tells him exactly where the boundary of reality is.
We see this exact same ruthlessness with the parameter he discusses called nu.
Yes. In version 12.0.2 of the SME, while reviewing the derivations, he realized that the new parameter, which was functioning as a coupling constant in his equations, was fundamentally unverifiable within the geometry he had built.
Wait, what does that mean? Unverifiable? Like you couldn't prove it existed.
Right. In a lot of theoretical work, if you have a variable that you can't quite pin down, it's often left in as a free parameter. It is essentially a mathematical blank check that theorists can tune later to make the equations match future experiments.
Oh, I see.
It was a very common practice. But Machiavelli recognized that keeping it in him violated his own rules of structural integrity. So he didn't try to hide it. He cleanly amputated it from the framework. He ripped it out of the math entirely.
To go back to our earlier analogies, it is like doing a home inspection and finding a load-bearing pillar in the basement that you suddenly realize is hollow.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of painting over it or quietly sliding some wood shims under it and hoping for the best, you just take a sledgehammer and rip it out completely just to see if the ceiling holds. If the house collapses, well, it was going to collapse eventually anyway. You needed to build a better house.
Precisely. If a component cannot be rigorously validated, it does not stay in the deployed system, period. He forces the mathematics of the universe to be as rigorously honest as his sobriety.
But this brings up a massive logistical problem. If he is operating out of a garage, if he is not at a university, and if he doesn't have traditional peer review, how is he brutally testing a five-dimensional physics framework?
It's a huge bottleneck.
Right. Math at this level requires immense scrutiny. If you drop a single negative sign on page 4, the conclusions on page 40 are completely useless.
He has to have a proxy for peer review, right?
He does. Because he lacks a university department to critique his work, he built a digital crucible.
A digital crucible. He constructed an intricate, multi-layered artificial intelligence auditing system to serve as an adversarial peer review board. This is the Sieur-Demy protocol and the Truth Teller Forge.
The Sieur-Demy protocol, let's break down how he actually engineers this because it is fascinating. Sieur-Demy stands for a cross-LLM referee system. It is a 3-tiered pipeline. Tier 1 is the ensemble.
In Tier 1, he takes his manuscript or his complex mathematical derivations and feeds them simultaneously to a diverse array of large language models.
Okay.
We are talking about running the data through ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Gemini, and Claude all at the exact same time. The goal here is to get raw, unblended critique from AI systems that have been trained on radically different data sets and possess different alignment protocols.
So they don't all think the same way.
Right. This eliminates the bias of a single provider. If you only ask ChatGPT, you only get OpenAI's blind spots.
Then he aggregates all those responses and moves to Tier 2, which he calls the crucible. This is where the magic happens. He looks for 2 specific phenomena: convergence and divergence.
Convergence is fairly straightforward. If Claude, Gemini, and DeepSeek all independently point to equation 14 and say the tensor calculus here violates the Bianchi identity, you have convergence.
They all agree it's broken.
Exactly. They all agree a flaw exists. That establishes a high probability ground truth of an error.
But divergence is where he extracts the really valuable insights. That is where the models radically disagree with each other.
Exactly. Say Claude accepts a geometric assumption is valid, but DeepSeek violently rejects it, and Gemini gets confused and hallucinates. That divergence reveals latent edge cases.
Okay, how so?
It shows him exactly where the theory is fragile, where the definitions are ambiguous, and where the human language is failing to accurately describe the math.
And finally, tier 3, metadata synthesis. He cross-references all these convergence and divergence points to create a hyper-refined, pressure-tested dataset.
Yes.
But what I found brilliant about this is that he doesn't just let the AIs chat with each other generically. He uses prompt engineering to assign them highly specific, competitive roles.
Role alignment is the secret sauce here.
Huh.
In his setup, he usually positions Claude as the co-author and primary architect. Claude's job is to build and synthesize, but he assigns DeepSeek the role of the adversarial auditor.
It is a competitive framing.
Very much so.
DeepSeek is explicitly incentivized in the prompt to find genuine structural fatal flaws in the physics. But, and this is the genius part, it is actively penalized if it manufactures fake objections or semantic fluff just to sound smart.
Exactly.
It's a built-in I told you so forcing function. He aligns the AI's internal reward mechanisms with finding the objective truth, rather than just appearing rigorous to the user.
And this generates an enormous amount of raw technical critique. I mean, pages and pages of it. To process all of it without getting overwhelmed, he built the TTF Forge, the Truth Teller Forge, currently on version 12.0.
Right.
The TTF is an automated scoring engine. He originally built it in Google Apps script to automate his workflows and later ported it to a native Android app.
How does the scoring engine actually work? The sources mention it weighs positive impactors against negative impactors.
It basically acts as a filtration system for AI hallucinations.
Yeah.
A positive impactor is a piece of critique that includes mathematical consistency, cites verifiable physical constants, and follows a logical progression.
Okay, good data.
Right. A negative impactor is fluff, circular logic, or unverified assumptions. The TTF engine strips away the polite, conversational filler that AIs love to generate, the as an AI language stuff.
Oh, I hate that stuff.
Everyone does. And it reduces the critique to its bare skeletal logic.
It also uses a metric called eta triangulation. I had to look this up. In physics, eta often represents conformal time or efficiency. Here, he uses it as a metric to measure logical drift.
Right.
It checks if the AI's critique loops back on itself efficiently or if it spirals out into unrelated tangents. If an AI's logic drifts too far, its lock consistency score drops, and its critique is penalized out of existence.
So ruthless.
It is a fully implemented architecture with daily automated triggers. There are no placeholders here. This is functioning software.
And this entire AI pipeline facilitates what he calls guided mutation.
Guided mutation.
Yeah. When the SME physics framework hits a breaking point under this brutal AI audit, say DeepSeek successfully destroys a core equation, it isn't viewed as a catastrophic failure of the project. It is treated as a controlled autopsy.
The TTS engine identifies the exact tensor breakdown or logical bottleneck. It isolates the specific failure. Then he cross-pollinates that specific failure point with external theories, and he mutates only the failed gene.
Exactly.
The baseline code, the rest of the theory, stays completely intact. Only the weak point evolves. Every time the system fails, it patches the hole and becomes geometrically tougher. It is literally evolutionary biology applied to theoretical physics.
It is. And this is the synthesis of everything we've discussed today. And it raises a profoundly important question for anyone listening. Think about your own life. What if we treated our own mental breakdowns, our own personal failures, or our bad decisions exactly like this? Not as a catastrophic collapse of our identity, not as a reason to spiral into shame, but as a controlled autopsy.
Imagine isolating the exact logic loop or the exact emotional trigger that failed in your day and mutating just that specific part to be stronger for the next time without throwing away your entire sense of self.
That is the ultimate realization of L1. Failure is direction. And this leads us perfectly into the final comprehensive synthesis tying together this entire protocol.
The big picture.
Right. We have seen the human side with the canon and the recovery. We have seen the theoretical and digital side with the physics and the Sortimi AI forge. Now, we have to look at the full architecture of the mind as a referee system. How do these pieces link together to form a single unified operating circuit?
He calls this final architecture the system triumvirate. It is a structural map of 3 interlocking cores that exert equal balancing priority over his life and work. Let's map out these three cores to understand how weaponized transparency actually prevents cognitive collapse at the highest level.
Core number 1 is the human context. This is the grounded fuel source.
Okay.
This is the raw material found in the autobiographical files. It is the addiction recovery arc, the intense discipline required to maintain sobriety, the mundane reality of the cats, the grandfather, and the sheer biological exhaustion of just being human.
So core number 1 provides the raw, chaotic pressure. It captures that internal intensity, and instead of letting it bleed out into relapse or despair, channels it directly into the system.
Exactly. But pressure needs a container, or it explodes.
Right.
That is core number 2. The architect. The architect provides the boundaries and the infrastructure. This includes the system manifold engine physics grid we discussed, but it also includes physical infrastructure designs he works on under the umbrella of Project Aegis.
Project Aegis was really fascinating to read about. It includes designs for hardened underground fiber optic vaults and solar roadway tile.
Yeah, very ambitious.
It is a literal physical blueprint for resilience. So, the architect core builds the logical, mathematical, and physical structures to safely contain and direct the human pressure from core number 1.
But if you only have the human and the architect, you risk arrogance. You risk building a structure so rigid that you start believing your own lies. You need a referee. You need an auditor.
And that is core number 3, Loki-Valley who laughs.
Loki-Valley who laugh. This is the forensic signal, the breach. It is the creative, theological challenger in this system.
This third node is absolutely vital because its sole purpose is to audit the other two. To understand how it works, we have to look at what he calls the Yahweh audit.
Right.
And to be clear for you listening, we are impartially reporting on his framework here. We are analyzing how he applies his systems thinking to ancient texts, not endorsing a specific religious theology.
Of course. He is essentially taking the Yordimi adversarial audit and applying it to theology. Through a lyrical musical project, he deconstructs modern religious tradition to find what he considers the original source code.
Precisely. In his lyrics and theological writings, he strips away what he calls lazy titles. For instance, he rejects the generic English word God as a modern filter, pointing back instead to the primitive, highly specific architecture of the scripture, the tetragrammaton, Yahweh, and the plural Elohim.
Yes.
He rejects the Hollywood bastardized aesthetics of modern religion.
He views modern, comfortable, consumer-driven religion as a digital cage built by the attention economy. It is designed to keep people comfortable rather than accountable. It is a distortion of the raw, primeval text.
So he runs an audit to purge those modern counterfeit filters. It is an act of radical submission to the unedited, often harsh architecture of the original text. He uses the exact same L4 doctrine, truth over comfort, to ensure his spiritual framework is as rigorous and unapologetic as his physics framework.
And when you synthesize these three cores, the human, the architect, and Loki-Valley who laughs, you see the mind as referee system in full continuous operation.
It all clicks together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The human creates the raw, messy pressure. The architect builds the logical and physical structures to contain it. And Loki-Valley who laughs continuously audits those structures to ensure they haven't evolved into comfortable lies or arrogance.
It is a continuous self-correcting loop.
Yeah.
If the human element gets too emotional or overwhelmed, the architect applies the 72 laws and the Chaos compression protocol to reestablish order.
Right.
If the architect gets too rigid, too obsessed with the math, or too arrogant, the laughing auditor breaks the ego down with a raw, undeniable truth. The three cores balance each other perfectly, preventing any single aspect of his psyche from collapsing the system.
It is just a stunning piece of self-engineering. From a rural Indiana garage, without a safety net, without a university degree, he has built a 5-dimensional physics engine, a 7-book emotional regulation code, and an adversarial AI forge, all functioning as a single unified circuit to keep him moving relentlessly forward.
He refused to accept a broken system just because it was the standard. He looked at the murky, muddy waters of physics, AI, and his own human trauma, and he decided to build a high-pressure filtration system from scratch.
He chose the controlled autopsy over the comfortable lie.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a breath and bring this all back to you. You do not have to be an unaccredited physicist to use this. You do not have to know how to code a multi-LLM scoring engine in your spare time or understand thick brain cosmology.
But the underlying principles of the system triumvirate are completely universal. When you're feeling overwhelmed, when the pressure in your life is building up to a critical mass, you have a choice.
Yeah.
Are you letting that pressure cavitate and destroy you from the inside? Or are you finding a way to channel it into a build?
Are you hiding your failed derivation attempts in life? You know, your mistakes, your relapses, the projects you abandoned, the bad decisions you made? Or are you looking at them honestly, logging them, and using them as direction?
Are you applying the upgrade-only doctrine to your own bad habits? Are you willing to do the hard work of building a new, healthier routine parallel to your old one, testing it, and then cleanly retiring the old one without backsliding?
Here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Look at the systems you rely on every single day. Look at your daily habits, your deeply held beliefs, your relationships, your personal truth. If you took them right now and put them through your own personal CRDME protocol,
Yeah.
if you unleashed a completely adversarial, objective audit on the things you hold most dear, would they survive the crucible? Would they hold up to the scrutiny? Or is it finally time for an upgrade-only replacement?
What if the devil's greatest trick wasn't I don't exist, but handing us the Bible as the Word of God? They call him God, like that's his holy name. Yahweh, Elohim, Yahweh, eternal shame. Exodus 24 screams.
No graven image, no likeness at all. Heaven above, earth below, waters beneath the call.
Rosary beads, that cross you clutch, goddamn blasphemy. Catholic tools straight from the pagan field.
Saints are all deities.
Same candle colors, same oils, idolatry, dressed in different signs. Exodus 25, jealous God devours, new mercy sets you free. Two different gods inside one book.
Look close and see.
What if the devil's greatest trick
Was the Bible
sick with lies so slick?
fire and brimstone pages?
Damn from the start.
Lilith was first to cover the nudity.
As above, so below.
Hell is heaven.
Heaven is hell.
Praise him.
Holy, holy, the sacred word stands eternal. Holy, holy,
Men rewrote the scrolls 1,000 times.
meanings muddied in ink and forgotten lies.
Are you lost? Which words are still divine?
Feel the void. What if the devil's greatest trick
Was the Bible
sick with lies so slick? Old God drowns the world, new God spills his blood. Personalities clash, one jealous tyrant, one soft love. If Old Testament God is ours and Jesus was his son, we should be terrified of the afterlife. Jesus knew him as father with a horrible creation, like a gun in any U.S. house to kill the child from bad storage. That's how God sees us, abomination.
Lilith first in Jewish myth, clay equal cast out before Eve.
Isaiah 14:12, Lucifer shines as archangel, son of the dawn.
Job 1, 6 hesitance, just the accuser never fell.
Elder doesn't heap of words, watered down to flame. Genesis 3:7, true, never apple fig leaves, not the shame. Uncover the naked truth, burn the lie in Yahweh's name.
Old Testament blood, New Testament blood. Personalities clash. One jealous, one love.
Holy, holy, trust the ancient scriptures. Holy, holy, centuries of scribes changed every line. Truth drowned in human design. Are you lost in the rewrite?
Feel the ground crack.
Why fight the doubt?
As above, so below.
What's the case of the kingdom? What is the devil's greatest trick?
Was the Bible
Sick with lies so slick.
fire and brimstone pages?
Stand from the start.
Uncover the nudity. translation,
or just another cage we call bliss.
as above.
So below, hell is heaven.
Everyone dies.
The greatest trick wasn't the fall from grace. It was the book that damned the human race. God damn the idolatry.
Everyone dies.
Holy, holy. Men rewrote it all, retranslated until nothing's whole.
Are you lost yet?
Which words remain divine, or just echoes in the void?
This work is not an act of heresy, but a rigorous historical audit intended to purge the modern counterfeit filters that have obscured the original divine signal. As an ordained minister reframing this deconstruction, the goal is to expose the systemic erasure of the tetragrammaton and the imposition of a man-made, translated cage of tradition. By stripping away the Hollywood bastardized aesthetics, those lazy titles and aesthetic symbols, the work forces the listener into a posture of radical submission to the raw, unedited architecture of the scriptures. It is a call for a return to the primitive, accurate name requiring the listener to move past institutional comfort and confront the terrifying, pluripotential truth of Elohim, Yahweh, on his own terms. Yahweh, you who inhabit the praises of your people, prepare this circle for your presence. We lift our hands open upward in total submission, ready to receive the raw signal, stripped of the centuries of ink that clouded your design. Let our hands be a sign of our surrender, not to tradition, but to the source. Let our voices become one in the clarity of your truth, rejecting the lazy titles that have muddied our understanding. Let the love you impart clean the architecture of our spirits, washing away the modern counterfeit claims in the translated cages we once called home. Let this moment of exposure linger in our hearts, a permanent glitch in the system that reminds us to keep reading, to keep auditing, until we find the path back to the beginning. We petition this in the name that was erased, the Almighty Elohim, Yahweh, that we may finally understand the power of the original sequence.